Every frontier AI company in the West is furious about the same thing. Chinese companies are taking their models, GPT, Claude, Gemini, and distilling them, copying them, extracting everything those models learn and pouring it into their own. They call it intellectual property theft. They call it a national security threat. They are lobbying governments to stop it. But here's what nobody's talking about. Distillation isn't just how Chinese companies catch up, it's the reason all AI models are getting smarter right now. And it might be the most important force in AI today that you haven't heard of. So what is distillation? Let me explain this simply. Imagine you're trying to learn chess. You could study every game ever played, read every book, spend 10,000 hours. That's what a frontier model does. It trains on essentially the entire internet. It is expensive, it takes months, it requires more electricity than a small city. Or you could sit across from a grandmaster and watch them play. You ask them why they moved the knight, notice the patterns, and that's distillation. In AI terms, you have a teacher model, huge, expensive, trained on everything, and a student model, which is smaller, cheaper, faster. The student doesn't learn from the internet like the master. It learns from the teacher's output, the teacher's reasoning, and the teacher's pattern. The student model watches how the teacher responds to a question. Not just the final answer, the internal logic, the way it reasons through a math problem, the way it structures an argument. Then the student learns to produce similar outputs even though it's a fraction of the size. This isn't cheating, it's how knowledge has always transferred. From an expert to an apprentice, from a senior engineer to junior, from parent to child. The student doesn't rediscover everything from scratch. It stands on the teacher's shoulders. So why frontier companies are furious? Now let's talk about why this is causing an international incident. When a company like DeepSeek or another Chinese AI firm takes GPT-4 and distills it, they are getting something incredibly valuable for almost free. They didn't spend $100 million on training compute. They didn't curate petabytes of data. They didn't solve the engineering problems of running thousands of GPUs in parallel. They just copied the result. From the perspective of OpenAI or Anthropic, this feels like theft. They invested billions. The competitors are getting the output of that investment without making the investment. But here's the uncomfortable truth. This is how the entire field has always worked. When Google published the transformer architecture in 2017, everyone copied it. When OpenAI showed that scaling laws predict model performance, everyone scaled. When Anthropic published research on constitutional AI, everyone read it. So knowledge in AI is almost impossible to keep secret. The papers are public, the techniques are described, the results are benchmarked. So if you have a smart team and some compute, you can distill. The frontier companies aren't mad that Chinese companies are being clever. They are mad that the game they are playing, spend the most money, get the best model, has a shortcut. And that shortcut is distillation. So the bigger question, where is the new intelligence coming from? So here's what I find more interesting about all this. The internet is finite. We've been saying this for years, but now it's a real constraint. The frontier models are already trained on essentially all high quality text available online. Hundreds of millions of books, papers, and public documents, Wikipedia, forum posts, news articles, everything. So if the data hasn't changed, if we are not adding significantly more internet every year, why are the models still getting smarter? There are two possible answers, and they are both about distillation. Answer one revolves around recursive distillation. Models are now training on data generated by other models. GPT-5 learns from the data that was influenced by GPT-4. Claude 4 learns from a model where Claude 3 already exists. Each generation distills into the next. The data isn't new in the sense of being written by a new human, but it's synthetic. It's structured, it's often higher quality than random internet text because it's being filtered through a model's reasoning. The second answer revolves around data multiplier effect. When a frontier model distills into a smaller model, that smaller model can generate millions of outputs cheaply. Those outputs become training data for the next generation of models. So one frontier model can teach 100 smaller models. Those 100 smaller models produce 1,000 times more data than the original. That data gets curated, filtered, and fed back into the next frontier model. It's a flywheel. The frontier model gets smarter because it's eating its own children's output. So, is this sustainable? Honestly, nobody knows. There is a real concern called model collapse. If models only train on other models' outputs, errors compound, distortions amplify. The models slowly drift from reality because they are learning from synthetic data that's slightly wrong, and each generation makes it slightly more wrong. We might already be seeing this. Some researchers have noticed the newer models produce more generic output, more safe, more likely to repeat patterns than to generate genuinely novel ideas. The distillation process might be optimizing for consensus rather than truth. On the other hand, this might be how all intelligence works. Humans don't each independently discover calculus. We learn from people who learn from other people. Knowledge compounds. The fact that AI models are doing the same thing, learning from each other, building on each other's reasoning, might not be a bug. It might be the feature. So here's a real takeaway. Distillation isn't a hack. It's not a loophole. It's the fundamental mechanism by which AI capability spreads and compounds. When frontier companies complain about Chinese firms distilling their models, they are really complaining that the cost of intelligence is dropping faster than they can monetize their investment. The thing they spend billions building is being replicated for millions, and then thousands, and eventually it'll run on your phone. That's not theft, that's progress. It's just progress that's uncomfortable for the people who thought they would have a monopoly. The question isn't whether distillation will continue. It will. The question is what happens when every model is a distillation of every model that came before. I don't think anyone has a good answer to that yet. But it's the most important question in AI right now. If this made you think, subscribe. I cover the mechanics of AI that actually matter, not the headlines, but the underlying forces shaping what's next. That's all I have for today. I'll see you in the next one.